come up. Did you see me jump the gun there? You did that on purpose, I think. Good morning. I'm all in. Are you all in? We're going to begin a series this morning, like Mark said, talking about church membership. When I was at the church in Abilene, we gained a lot of folks over the years that unfortunately many of them came from other churches in the area. And we always held the notion, and we do here as well, we're not in the business of stealing sheep. We don't want to recruit members away from other churches, but at the same time, we want to be a soft place for you to land if you need that. And as people would come in, we would ask them, have you thought about placing membership? And you could tell that was just a foreign concept to them, the idea of placing membership. And so it got me to thinking, maybe we could use a series talking about what it means to be a member of the Lord's body. There's a man that was kind of in love with a girl. And I say kind of in that he wouldn't make a long-term commitment. I mean, he was in an exclusive relationship with her. They weren't dating anybody else. They had, promised that they were going to stay true to one another, and, they were spending the majority of their time together. But every time the woman would bring up marriage, the man got defensive. And he would say things like, well, what's wrong with the relationship as it is now? I thought everything was fine. And the woman couldn't understand why he was so determined not to get married. But in his mind, he still wanted all the benefits that come from being in a monogamous relationship, but he didn't want the burden of responsibility. He wanted to keep his options open. He didn't want to make a full-on commitment. In case he wanted out at some point, he could do so without a lot of red tape. There was a guy who kind of loved the church. I say kind of because he was there every time the doors were open. He liked the singing, he liked the preaching, he liked the people there. And one time an elder came up to him and said, have you thought about placing membership? And he got really defensive. Well, why do I need to place membership? I mean, I'm here, aren't I? And as it turns out, he didn't want the burden of responsibility. He didn't want to be all in. He wanted to keep his options open. He didn't want people relying on him or counting on him. He wanted all the benefits, but he didn't want the responsibility. He wanted the maximum, but only wanted to give the minimum. When you scan the religious landscape today, you find countless believers, but not as many belongers. You find a bunch of consumers, but maybe not as many communers. There are far too many individuals who look at church like a one-sided relationship. They don't want to invest too much, no full-on commitment. They want to keep their options open. They simply want to date the church. They have no interest in a long-term commitment. But what they don't understand, or perhaps fail to acknowledge, is that this responsibility is a two-way street. That there is a give and take here. You cannot give the minimum and expect the maximum. How many of you looked at the promo video this week on social media and your adrenaline spiked? Or you heard me say that we're going to talk about membership this morning and you got so excited you could hardly contain yourself. It's probably not the most exciting subject to talk about. However, I think it's necessary. I mean, I have the unenviable task of trying to make the topic of church membership something that is interesting, and hopefully I can rise up to meet that task and accomplish it. But I want to start by saying this. I think we need to rethink church membership. Some might wonder, why is it even necessary to place membership? I mean, isn't that an American construct? Isn't that an cultural invention that we came up with just to get your name on the roll and your picture in the directory? No, it goes way beyond that. Although some believe that, there's way more to it than just the superficial. And so we need to look at this from a different perspective, and we're going to start at James chapter 1, beginning in verse 21. It says, therefore, putting aside all filthiness and all that remains of wickedness, in humility receive the word implanted, which is able to save your souls. But prove yourselves doers of the word, and not merely hearers who delude themselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror. For once he has looked at himself and gone away, he has immediately forgotten what kind of person he was. But one who looks intently at the perfect law, the law of liberty, and abides by it, not having become a forgetful hearer, but an effectual doer, this man will be blessed in what he does. So James exhorts the reader to look into the mirror, and what do you see? So he's asking you, look intently. This is not some passing glance. This is, hey, do some introspection here. Look in the mirror, study yourself, and what do you see? What's interesting here is when you dig into the original Greek language, you find a lot of words that bring to light a very vivid message here by James. For instance, when he talks about filthiness, the word filthiness here in the Greek is raparia, and it denotes dirt or filth. It means, in this passage, moral defilement. It's derived from the word rupos, and rupos can refer to wax in the ear. In the Greek, it's a medical term. And so it's very possible that James is using it in that sense here, and he's saying, hey, get the wax out of your ears and listen to what I'm saying. The word hearer here, as James uses it, is akroatai. And that word was used in the early centuries to designate those who attend a lecture and hear, but don't do anything with the information. The word doer in the Greek is poietai, and it derives from the word poieo, which denotes creative action. So it's about more than just mechanical action. It's about more than just rote or routine going through the motions. There's another Greek word for that type of doer, and that's a word that James purposely avoids here. To be a doer, one must be passionately involved. The effectual doer has a faith in action, a living faith, as James talks about in James chapter 2 of his epistle. A doer is someone who is intent on taking what he hears from God's word and translating it into action. So effectual doers are not just church daters. They don't simply go through the motions. They don't stand on the periphery. They get involved. Effectual doers don't go through the motions. Effectual doers are not afraid of commitment. In other words, effectual doers are all in. And so think about James' words here. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? When you strip it all away and you really examine yourself, what is left? The word for look here in the Greek is parakupos. And it's the exact same word that is used of Peter and Mary stooping down to look into the tomb of Jesus on resurrection morning. James is using this word to suggest an intent look, a look that reveals an abiding interest on the part of the viewer, a recognition that something vitally important here needs to be seen. Perhaps you've never really thought about your status as a member of the church. You attend, you're here, but maybe you've never thought about taking it to the next level. And I do want to give this disclaimer. If you're new, that's okay. We don't expect you to just dig right in and find a place to get involved. If you're new, we ask you to kind of take your time, feel your way out, and maybe talk to somebody about where you can plug in. If you're a new Christian, then obviously you're growing and you're learning and you're trying to figure out your place here, and certainly there is space for that. If you're somebody who came from another congregation and maybe you were hurt there, and maybe you feel like this is a place that you can kind of heal, then do that. Maybe sit back for a time and just kind of take it in and relax for a little bit. Hit the reset button perhaps. But if you've been a Christian for quite some time and you've never taken the relationship to the next level, then I want to encourage you to think about that long and hard. To put it another way, when the Lord adds you to His church, what does that mean? When I was in high school, I took up golf. Wasn't a good golfer, but I enjoyed it. I'd play just about every day during the summer, and my parents thought about, how they were paying exorbitant amount of money for me to go and play golf. These green fees, cart fees, and all that. They decided, it may be better if we just get him a membership to the Paragould Country Club. And so that's what they did. I became a member, and as soon as I became a member of the Paragould Country Club, I had a different strut to my walk. I felt like I was a bigwig. I was royalty. I could walk in, I could eat in the dining room, I could swim afterwards. There were all sorts of amenities that were afforded to me because I was a member of the country club. And unfortunately, there are some who look at the church the same way. I contribute my money, so where's my perks? Where are my perks? Where are the amenities? Unfortunately, some look at church membership as a privilege, and only a privilege that is one-sided. Sadly, you see this mentality over and over again. This is my church. You better sing the songs that I like. If you don't implement this program, I'm going to withhold my contribution. Hey, preacher, remember who pays your salary? I've been a member of this church since it started. You better do what I say. I contribute lots of dollars to this church. You better let me teach or lead. I think you get the picture. These Christians have a view of membership that's not in line with what the Bible states, but rather a country club mentality. For them, membership is about receiving, not giving. They expect to be served rather than to serve, and the focus is on rights instead of responsibilities. They only see entitlements, but not sacrifice. Their offering entitles them to an unending supply of perks and privileges, or so they think. But listen to what Paul wrote in chapter 1 of Galatians, starting in verse 10. He says, For am I now seeking the favor of men or of God? Or am I striving to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. Paul is saying something that I think is very, very, very important for us to internalize. Every church member needs to recognize this and apply it to their lives. Paul is saying, it's not about you. It's not about you. Get over yourself. It's not about you. It wasn't Paul's job to please them. It was Paul's job to please God. And he admits that trying to please men is an effort in futility, that it's the wrong focus. Try pleasing the crowd and see what happens. Try making everyone happy. It's an effort in futility. It's about glorifying God. And Paul points this out. You can't glorify God when your mission is only to please people. Here's the thing. Membership does have its privileges, and I've got them on the screen. Here are some of the privileges of being a member. Children of God are free from God's wrath. The privilege of being free from the bondage of sin. There's the privilege of being free from the law. There's the privilege of being free from death. These are wonderful privileges, but let's not confuse privileges with entitlement. The church is literally the called out, which means that we do not attend a building or a country club. Consider Romans 12, 4 and 5. Brody read it a moment ago. For just as we have many members in one body, and all the members do not have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another. God added us to His church. Why do you think that is? Why have you been added to the Lord's church? Well, I think it's to serve, to care for others, to learn, to teach, to give, even die for the gospel if necessary. Membership is not about perks. It's about function. And 1 Corinthians chapter 12 is a passage that we will come back to over and over again in this series. But Paul makes some really good points when it comes to church membership. Notice what it says, beginning in verse 12. For even as the body is one and yet has many members, and all the members of the body, though they are many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot says, because I'm not a hand, I'm not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. And if the ear says, because I'm not an eye, I'm not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body, just as He desired. If they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, or again, the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, it is much truer that the members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary, and those members of the body which deem less honorable, on those we bestow more abundant honor, and our less presentable members we become much more presentable, whereas our more presentable members have no need of it. But God has so composed the body, giving more abundant honor to that member which lacked, so that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. And if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Membership has its function. Are you a member of the Lord's church? And if the answer is yes, the next question is, so what is your function? What are you doing? Because everyone has a function. Membership is not just about having your name on the roster or your picture in the directory. Membership is about function. Church membership is functioning membership. It means that we are all necessary parts of the whole. And Paul makes it crystal clear that we are connected to one another and dependent upon one another. Paul also makes it crystal clear that though there are different members and though that we're different parts, we all have a part. And that part must be functioning, because if it's not functioning, then the body is deformed. If your part of the body is not functioning, then the body cannot function properly, or somebody else is having to perform your part, and therefore the body is deformed. When I was growing up, I was a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, still am, even though it's tough at times. And Deion Sanders played for the Cowboys, and one time he was ruled out of a game because he had turf toe. You know what turf toe is? Apparently it's when you bend your big toe back in a direction it shouldn't go, and it's supposedly pretty painful, and Deion Sanders was missing a game because of turf toe. And I thought to myself, really? I mean, you get millions upon millions of dollars and you can't play because your toes hurt? Then playing sports, I got turf toe. And if you've ever had turf toe, it's really, really difficult to do anything. You don't realize how important that big toe is. For balance, for stability, for running. You can almost do nothing when it comes to sports because it hampers you so much. That toe, which seems insignificant, plays a big part in what you do in everyday activity, much less in sports. You may seem like an insignificant part. You may think, well, I don't really have anything to contribute here. I don't really add any value to the body. Every body part is important, because the body can't function properly unless we're all doing our job. There are 4 major bones in the church. You know what they are? First, you have the wishbones. The wishbones are the people who just wish somebody would do something. Then you have the jawbones. You know who the jawbones are? The jawbones are the people who talk bad about everybody not doing something, or the people who just criticize everything. Then you have the knuckle bones. They just knock everything. But then you have the backbones. The backbones are the ones who bear the load. They're the ones who get the work done. They're the ones that hold everything together. Why do you think the Lord added you to His church? Why does He add us to the church? I mean, this is a blood-bought institution, is it not? Jesus Christ died for every member here. He purchased us member by member with His own blood. The church was a part of His eternal plan. From the very beginning, it was a part of His plan. So you would think it's important. Why does He add you to the church? Don't you think that's significant? Don't you think that's a question we probably need to figure out? If someone were to ask you, where do you go to church? You say the Walnut Street Church of Christ. They would be well within their right to ask the next question. So what do you do there? How would you answer that question? So what do you do there? Because membership is about function. You read through the book of Acts, you read Paul's letters in their entirety. See if you can find anywhere a non-functioning church member. See if you can find anywhere a pew potato. See if you can find anywhere somebody who did nothing and that was okay. When God adds you to His church, He adds you to a functioning body, and therefore you are to function. Let's look at this from a different perspective. Notice what Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 2, beginning in verse 4. And coming to Him as a living stone, which has been rejected by men, but is choice and precious in the sight of God, you also as living stones are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Peter states that Christians are living stones in a spiritual house, which means that we are all bricks, if you will. I've been accused of being dumb as a brick. We're all bricks to a certain extent, in that we all come together to form this spiritual house. But if you take away one brick, you compromise the integrity of the structure. You take away a few bricks and you really are at risk of the thing crumbling to the ground. So we're all living stones, right? We're all a part of this building, this structure. And there's still work to do because God is still building, so I have to ensure that the integrity of this structure isn't compromised. Paul often compares the church to an army as well. He spoke about how all members are to put on the full armor of God because our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers and the dark forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Some soldiers desert the ranks. Some soldiers go AWOL. Paul addresses this in 1 Thessalonians 5:14 when he writes, "We urge you, brethren, admonish the unruly, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with everyone." The word unruly here is a military term, and it means disorderly, or one who leaves the ranks or deserts his post. But also consider what Paul writes in 2 Timothy chapter 2. It says, "Suffer hardship with me as a good soldier of Christ Jesus." No soldier in active service entangles himself in the affairs of everyday life so that he may please the one who enlisted him as a soldier. A soldier is totally dedicated to his work. He must be. He must be dedicated to his fellow soldiers and to the mission because the mission can't be accomplished if he's not. If the mission is going to be successful, we all have to be on the same page working together to fulfill it. When you are added to the Lord's church, you are enlisted in the Lord's army and you have to fight. That's what soldiers do. They fight. They die for the cause. So you're not just a member, you're a soldier, and soldiers fight. But I want you to notice one more analogy. Notice that Paul compares the church to a bride. Ephesians 5. "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless." Each and every church member has a personal responsibility to be faithful to the bridegroom. Christ wants his church to remain holy and pure. And the only way for this to happen is for each and every one of us to realize our responsibility in this regard. So, you are a body part, you are a living stone, you are a soldier, you are a bride because you are a member, which means that you work, you support, you fight, not with each other, and you promote faithfulness and purity. This is what it means to be a church member, and this will set the tone for our series going forward. It's not simply about telling the elders, "Hey, I'm here. Put me on the roll. Put my picture in the One Church app." It's not about getting your name on a list. It's not about perks. It's about being a part of something bigger than yourself. Look, if this has come across as condemning or scolding, that's not my intent. Because I believe we have a wonderful group of Christians that meet here that are seeking to do the very things that I've talked about. This is a functioning body. You know, it's funny, when I first got here, people said, you know, we just want to be a bigger part of our community. We want to do things to reach out to our community. Now I thought, wow, I mean, I want to be a part of that. But honestly, this church does more in the community than any church I've ever been a part of. So that's a good starting point. That we're already doing great things and you want to do more. Many of you come to me with ideas that you have about things that you want to do. This is a wonderful congregation that is doing great things. So don't take this as scolding. I just want us to consider what it means to be all in, because that's our theme this year. And to be all in is going to mean for some of us to take things to the next level. To consider my part in this body and what I am doing. And it may not be anything grandiose. It may be something that seems rather insignificant, but if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. There are no insignificant body parts. You are all important to what we do here and what we can accomplish. For many years, my mother-in-law was a foster parent. And she would keep little babies until they were adopted out or until maybe the parent or parents got them back. One little girl that she fostered for quite some time was a little girl named Justice. And Justice was the cutest thing you've ever seen. In fact, it was hard for Libby and I not to adopt her ourselves. But one Christmas, Justice wasn't even a year old, and we were sitting in the floor opening presents, and she had a lot of presents. And of course, at that age, you're trying to get them excited about their gifts because they don't really know what's going on. So you're opening the gifts and you're oohing and ahhing, saying, oh, isn't this great? And of course, they don't really care too much. What was interesting is of all the great gifts that Justice got, you know what her favorite gift was? The box that it came in. Forget the gifts. She wanted to play with the boxes. Were your kids like that growing up? Maybe on Christmas morning, you open up all these gifts when they're little, and they just were happily entertained by the box. And you're thinking, look, and we got you this gift. And they just want to play with the box. Salvation is the greatest gift we could ever receive, right? No doubt about that. But if you read through the book of Acts, you see that salvation is tied to our part in the church. In Acts chapter 2, it talks about how those who repented and baptized received the Holy Spirit, and the Lord added them to his church. So salvation, in addition to the church, those things go hand in hand. Don't you think that's important? I think God intends for us to not treat this gift in a self-directed manner, to cherish this gift, and not just play with the box. Membership is not about just perks or entitlement. It's about function. And when we treat it in a self-directed manner, when we don't carry out our responsibility, we're not valuing the gift. When we stand on the sidelines or we expect the church to serve us, we're just playing with the box. Don't give the minimum and expect the maximum. This is a two-way street here. Let's give it our all and understand that this isn't a perfect place. And no church is. If you find the perfect church, don't go there. You'll ruin it. There is no such thing as a perfect church. That church you go to on vacation seems like they have it all together. They got their problems too. Every church does. But we don't expect perfection in any other area of life. But it frustrates me that often we do in church. Politics, whatever it is, we'll overlook a lot of things. We don't expect perfection in anything else. But often we do in the church. Understand that this is an imperfect place because there's people here. And where you have people, you have problems. And also understand that we are a church family that is growing, and therefore, sometimes you don't know everybody. Please don't get offended when somebody comes up and says, hey, I'm so-and-so, what's your name? And you say, well, I've been here 25 years. That's great. Still don't know you. I'm going to shake your hand, hug your neck, or whatever. Don't be offended by that. But also remember this. You can't come in late and leave early and never go to Bible class and never come to evening service and never come Wednesday night and expect anybody to know who you are. Don't be upset when you don't feel like you're included when you're not even here most of the time, or when you are here, you come in late and leave early. We need to know who you are. We need to plug you in. We want you to be an active part of this congregation, but it's a two-way street, right? I love you guys, and I want this to be the best place that it can possibly be, and I believe that our best days are ahead. So let's all dig in and get to work, right? If we can help you this morning, Mark's got a song. We want to invite you to come forward as we stand and as we sing.